The rain fell steadily on the courthouse steps in the quiet town of Willow Ridge, a place nestled between rolling hills and old oak forests in the Pacific Northwest. It was the kind of town where everyone knew your name, but few knew your secrets. On that gray October afternoon in 2024, Elena Harper walked out of the family court building with nothing but a small leather satchel over her shoulder and a quiet calm in her eyes. She was 41 years old, a former high school literature teacher who had given up her career 15 years earlier to help her husband build what everyone called the family dream. Her soon-to-be ex-husband, Marcus Harper, stood a few steps behind her, shaking hands with his lawyer and smiling the confident smile of a man who believed he had just won everything. Marcus was 50, tall and well-dressed, the founder and public face of Harper Timber and Millworks, a company that supplied custom wood products to builders across 3 states. To the outside world, Marcus was the hardworking provider, the community leader who sat on the town council and coached youth baseball. Elena had been the silent partner, handling the books, managing suppliers, calming angry clients, and raising their 2 children almost single-handedly while Marcus traveled for business. In the final divorce hearing, Marcus had made his position crystal clear. He wanted the house on Maple Ridge Lane, the large cedar home they had built together. He wanted the 2 company vehicles. He wanted the cabin up at Silver Lake. He wanted full control of Harper Timber and Millworks, including all its contracts, equipment, and bank accounts. He even asked for the antique grandfather clock that had belonged to Elena's grandmother, claiming it was part of the marital assets. His lawyer had presented it as a clean, fair split. Elena's lawyer had advised her to fight, but she simply shook her head and signed the papers without argument. The judge, noting the voluntary agreement, approved the settlement in under 20 minutes. As they left the courthouse, Marcus paused beside her under the covered walkway. Rain dripped from the edge of the roof. "You made the right choice, Elena," he said, his voice carrying that familiar tone of gentle authority. "The kids are almost grown. You'll be fine. I'll make sure you get a fair monthly support check. No hard feelings." Elena looked at him for a long moment. The man she had once loved had become someone she barely recognized, someone who measured success only in what he could control. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Marcus," she replied softly. He chuckled, adjusting his coat. "I already have. Everything." Then he walked away toward his silver SUV, the one she had helped pay for with years of careful bookkeeping and late-night calls to suppliers. What Marcus did not know, what almost no one knew, was that Elena had stopped being the quiet supporter 3 years earlier. It had started on a rainy night much like this one. While organizing old financial files in the home office, Elena had discovered a pattern. Marcus had been quietly shifting company funds into personal offshore accounts for years. Not massive theft at first, just small, steady diversions, money that should have gone back into the business for new equipment, employee benefits, and tax obligations. He had also taken out several large loans in the company's name, using the house and mill as collateral to fund a lifestyle he kept hidden: private golf club memberships, expensive trips with new business associates, and a separate apartment in Portland that Elena only learned about later. The company was not thriving the way Marcus proudly claimed at town meetings. It was surviving on borrowed time, propped up by creative accounting that Elena herself had unknowingly helped maintain until she saw the full picture. Instead of confronting him immediately, Elena had made a different choice. She began to document everything, quietly, meticulously. She created backup records, consulted a discreet financial advisor in Seattle, and slowly restructured certain aspects of the company's operations under her oversight, always making sure every move was legal and transparent on paper. She transferred no money to herself. She simply prepared. When Marcus announced he wanted a divorce to be with a younger woman from his Portland circle, Elena felt a strange sense of relief, mixed with sorrow. Not for the marriage, she had already mourned that loss, but for the years she had given so freely. In the divorce negotiations, she offered almost no resistance. She let him take the house. She let him take the vehicles. She let him take the cabin. She signed over her shares in Harper Timber and Millworks without demanding a buyout. She even agreed to let him keep most of the joint savings, keeping only a modest amount for herself and the children's future education. Marcus's lawyer had been stunned by how easily it all went. "Your client is being unusually generous," he told Elena's attorney. Elena had simply smiled and said nothing. 6 weeks after the divorce was finalized, the first cracks appeared. Marcus moved into the Maple Ridge house with his new partner, Lauren. He celebrated by hosting a large party for friends and business contacts, toasting to new beginnings and taking control of my legacy. He announced plans to expand the mill, secure bigger contracts, and modernize the equipment with the fresh capital he now controlled. But the bank statements told a different story. The loans Marcus had taken out years earlier were coming due. The interest rates were higher than he remembered because he had never paid close attention to the fine print. Elena had always handled those details. Several major clients, upon learning of the divorce and the change in management, quietly began to pull their contracts, citing concerns about stability. Suppliers who had trusted Elena's calm professionalism now demanded stricter payment terms. Within 3 months, Harper Timber and Millworks was struggling to meet payroll. Marcus tried to sell some of the equipment to raise cash, but discovered that much of it was older than he realized and had been maintained on a shoestring budget. The hidden reserves he thought existed were mostly accounting entries that balanced only because Elena had juggled them carefully for years. One cold December morning, Marcus received a certified letter from the county tax office. Years of underreported income and unpaid business taxes, issues Elena had flagged privately but never acted on while still married, were now being audited. The penalties and back taxes amounted to more than the company's current liquid assets. He stormed into the house that evening, slamming doors and shouting at Lauren. "This isn't possible. The books were clean. Elena handled them for years. She must have messed something up on purpose." But the records were clear. Every signature on the questionable filings belonged to Marcus. Every major financial decision carried his approval. Elena had simply stopped covering for him the moment she realized the truth. By February, the bank initiated foreclosure proceedings on the Maple Ridge house. The Silver Lake cabin was already listed for sale to cover mounting legal fees from the tax case. The company vehicles were repossessed. Marcus tried to negotiate with old business partners, but many had quietly sided with the version of the story that painted him as reckless and Elena as the steady hand who had kept things afloat. One afternoon in early spring, Marcus drove to the small rental apartment where Elena now lived with their daughter, who was home from college for the semester. He looked thinner, his once confident posture slightly bent. Elena opened the door and invited him in for coffee. No anger in her voice. Just the same quiet calm she had shown on the courthouse steps. "I don't understand," Marcus said, his hands trembling slightly around the mug. "I thought I was taking everything. The house, the business, the life we built. How did it all fall apart so fast?" Elena looked out the window at the budding cherry trees in the small courtyard. She spoke gently, like a teacher explaining a difficult passage in a book. "You weren't taking everything, Marcus. You were taking the weight, the debts, the risks you never fully understood because I was always there to balance them. You took the visible success, but you also took the invisible burden I had been carrying alone for years. I didn't hide the problems from you out of spite. I hid them because I still believed in us. When that belief ended, I simply stopped protecting you from the consequences of your own choices." She paused, then added, "I didn't take anything from you. I let you have exactly what you demanded. The rest was never really yours to begin with. It was the cost of the way you chose to live." Marcus sat in silence for a long time. For the first time in years, he seemed to see her, not as the convenient partner who made his life easier, but as the intelligent, patient woman who had understood the numbers better than he ever had. In the months that followed, Elena quietly rebuilt. She took a part-time teaching position at the local community college, teaching creative writing and literature, something she had always loved. With the modest settlement she had kept and the support payments, she and the children found a new rhythm. Their son, now in his final year of high school, began helping her with a small online woodworking tutorial business she started as a hobby. It grew slowly but steadily, built on honesty and careful planning. Marcus, meanwhile, lost the house. The company was restructured under new ownership after the tax issues were settled through bankruptcy proceedings. He moved to a smaller apartment in a neighboring town and took a consulting job in the lumber industry, far less glamorous than being the owner. He never publicly blamed Elena. In quiet conversations with old friends, he sometimes admitted that he had underestimated the quiet strength that had held their world together. Years later, on a bright summer day, Elena stood on the porch of a modest but beautiful home she had purchased with her own earnings. Her children visited often. She had started writing a book, not a tell-all memoir, but a collection of essays about resilience, choices, and the unseen labor that holds families and small businesses together. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, she received a short message from Marcus. It was not an apology exactly, but something close. "I finally understand what I really took that day, and what I lost. Thank you for not destroying me when you could have." Elena read the message twice, then set her phone down. She did not reply immediately. There was no need for dramatic closure. The story had already ended the way it needed to, not with revenge, but with clarity. She had never set out to win. She had simply stopped losing herself in someone else's version of success. And in letting go of everything she thought she needed to fight for, Elena Harper had quietly reclaimed the only thing that truly mattered, her own life, on her own terms. The rain that had fallen on the courthouse steps years earlier had long since dried. In its place grew new trees, strong and steady, their roots reaching deep into soil that had been carefully tended all along.